Good afternoon, sports fans, and welcome into another edition of And That's the Game. It is And That's the Game for Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. And while we all wish that we could be calling game set match on the United States presidential election, it is not game set match. That is still ongoing and probably will be for the next day or so. But we do have game set and match in the Champions League, and we're going to get you a quick update on that. As it currently stands, there are only two games that have been completed. Zenit has tied Lazio 1-1. The big story out of that is Manchester United falling to Istanbul Başakşehir 2-1. Games that are currently at halftime right now. Chelsea is up over Rennes 2-0. Red Bull Leipzig, who I back a few weeks ago in one of the premiere shows that we did for Sports World Weekly on Saturday mornings, said that Red Bull Leipzig was going to be a team to watch in Group H. They were going to be that team that could challenge Manchester United or Paris Saint-Germain for that potential second spot, and they are showing it right now as they are tied 1-1 with Paris Saint-Germain. Borussia Dortmund having no problems with Club Brugge. They're up 3-0. Barcelona surprisingly up only 1-0 over Dynamo Kyiv. And Juventus also surprisingly up only 1-0 over Fenerbahce. Sevilla in Group E having some troubles with FC Krasnodar. They trail currently Krasnodar 2-1. All of those matches are at halftime. Of course, yesterday, Man City, Liverpool, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Ajax, Porto, Mönchengladbach, all picking up wins. Atletico Madrid and Lokomotiv Moscow were the only tie. They drew at 1-1. And so that is where we stand in week 3 in Champions League. Our main story for today is the number 365. That's correct. 365, as in the number of days in a calendar year. It's also been 365 days since the Australian Football Association declared that there would be equal pay and equal revenue share between the men's and women's teams in Australia, otherwise affectionately known as the Matildas for the women's and the Socceroos for the men. This became the first of any international football federation to say that their men's and women's teams would be paid equally. This decision was done after discussions regarding collective bargaining agreements with both of the teams, and had been done at a time in which the women were about to play a couple of friendlies in advance of what was supposed to be February's Olympic qualifying competitions. Those have all since been delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But the fact of the matter is that they were able to figure out how to come up with a 40-40-20 system that shared revenue equally and shared pay equally between the men's team, the women's team, and the Australian Football Association. Now, the Australian football teams, both on the men's and women's side, aren't as successful as the US are. They aren't as successful as many other countries are. But when Australia did it, it started a catapult. Then came Brazil. Then came 4 other countries. And here we sit 365 days later, and the 4-time defending World Cup champion U.S. women's national team does not have an equal pay system. 365 days after Australia, who has never won an international championship, figured out how to do it, and the U.S. women's national team still does not have an equal pay system. The setup in U.S. soccer regarding how revenue streams come in is exactly the same as it is in every other football federation in the world. It all comes in as one pot. All of the sponsorship deals are not separate. Visa does not sponsor the men's soccer team and not sponsor the women's soccer team. They sponsor U.S. soccer. And that revenue goes into the pot. Same for Google. Same for Budweiser. Same for Verizon. Same for any of the sponsors of U.S. soccer. So to be able to sit here and say the revenue is separate, the revenue is different, that's incorrect. The television deals are done exactly the same way too. Fox Sports or ESPN or CBS or whoever it might be does not pay a separate television rights fee for men's soccer or women's soccer. They pay a television rights fee to U.S. soccer to be able to broadcast the games, as Fox did when they broadcasted the U.S. men's national team games through the Gold Cup and the U.S. women's team's games in the FIFA World Cup. Fox paid one single fee to U.S. soccer for the rights to be the United States broadcaster. All of that money went into one pot. The men's team somehow got a bigger portion of that while doing absolutely nothing close to what the women's team has done. Then there's merchandise as well, too. The men's and women's teams wear the exact same kits, obviously designed a little bit differently so that the kits that the women wear fit their bodies compared to the kits that the men wear. That's why we have men's cut and women's cuts. But when it goes to Nike for jersey sales, you can buy the same jersey because the design is exactly the same. I have a U.S. women's national team jersey that hangs in my closet. It's a men's jersey, but it has the U.S. women's national team crest with the 4 stars on it. I don't have a name or number on the back of that jersey because I like every single player on the team. But I can tell you that if I had a name or number on the back of that jersey, it wouldn't be a U.S. men's team number. It'd be a U.S. women's team number. And that being said, all of the money from Nike that's for U.S. soccer purchases doesn't get separated by men's or women's. It goes in one pot to U.S. soccer. So there's no ability here for U.S. soccer, which used to be run by Carlos Cordeiro. Of course, now that's changed, to be able to sit here and say, we don't know how to be able to split the money. There isn't a separate U.S. women's team pot and a separate U.S. men's team pot. There's one U.S. soccer pot. Australia figured out how to do it. Brazil has figured out how to do it. France has figured out how to do it. The Netherlands have figured out how to do it. Germany has figured out how to do it. Sweden has figured out how to do it. None of these teams are anywhere close in comparison to the level of success, the level of popularity, the level of fandom that the U.S. women's national team has put out. And even with all the failures of the U.S. men's team, none of these countries still have the same level of fandom around their men's team, despite all of the failures that the U.S. has. So to sit here 365 days after Australia became the first National Football Federation to figure out how to pay its men's and women's soccer teams equally, and in the United States, the championship side, we don't have it figured out yet. I hope, honest to God, it's not another 365 days before we do get it figured out. Chicago, you're on the clock. And that's the game for November 4th, 2020. I'm Matt Jolis. I'll see you Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. for Sports World Weekly, right here on the networks of Sports Fan Base Network Rhode Island. Take care and have a good night.